So,
Paul Vanchiere. Is it Vanchiere or Vanchiere?
Vanchiere, like
Oh,
driver
it's
Van,
Vanchiere. I
Vanchiere in the
was
top.
way
But
off.
yeah, yeah, that's fine. It's good.
Well, Paul,
Yeah.
welcome to PedChat. Just so everybody knows who Paul is, if you haven't heard of him before, because I'm sure a lot of the audience has, Paul is the founder and owner of the Pediatric Management Institute, also known as PMI, and they offer a suite of services exclusively for pediatricians. You have financial services, operational, efficiency and optimization services. You are, in my mind, one of the most, from our prior conversation, one of the most knowledgeable individuals as it relates to operating a pediatrician's practice. So, Paul, welcome to PedChat.
Well, thank you, Zach. It's nice to meet you. Nice to spend some time with you today and talk about what we're up to and how we can help the practices identify opportunities for improvement. Because that's really what our job is about: is education and awareness, and identifying those opportunities to provide a more stable financial footing for these practices so that then they could possibly offer more services and provide better care for children in their community.
One of the most rewarding things, PMI, at least from what I'm gauging and the feedback that I've gotten, one of the most rewarding things PMI does is visit pediatric practices around the country to identify essentially opportunities for improvement. What I'd like to know is, throughout the last, let's say, 12 months, what are the top 2 recommendations you've made to pediatric offices? So think back to all the office visits you made, all the consultations that you've had. What are the top 2 recommendations that you've made in the past year?
I think the top 2 are finding effective ways to monitor the practice financially. Whether you use an office practicum, PCC, eClinicalWorks, Athena, find a way to digest the information in a very simple way so you can stay on top of the finances. If you're not monitoring the practice, it will slip away, and it takes a long time to recover. Airline pilots are very smart people. They know how to get a plane from point A to point B. However, you still need air traffic controllers who have a lot of information to help them guide them on their path and get them to their destination. And you sort of need to look at it in that mindset. I need information along the way so I can guide my practice to the destination I want it. And really, you need to break down a process so that you can get those financials on a timely basis that provide relevant information to make decisions. That's number 1. Number 2 is it is not uncommon in a practice where you may have 4, 8, 12, 20 providers, and you have a managing partner who is sort of assuming a lot of responsibilities in running the practice. And, when you're an owner of a practice, you're busy seeing patients, but you also need to take some of that administrative responsibility. And the reason is twofold. Number 1, you are partners in the practice. If you are an owner, you should be helping, whether it's IT, human resources, or finance. You should be helping in the running of the practice and not just showing up once a month and telling your partner what they should or shouldn't be doing. You need to get in the trenches and be a part of the management of the practice. Another reason for that is if you have one person who's the center of all that knowledge, when it's time for them to leave, and everyone leaves, whether you retire or you die or whatever, you're not going to lose that institutional knowledge. And so it's a division of that responsibility that needs to take place among everyone who's an owner within the practice.
What does the future of pediatrics look like in your mind?
I think there's going to be more consolidation among practices. I think that it is going to be a challenge for solo and 2 provider practices to meet all of the responsibilities with them by the time you add HIPAA and everything else into the mix. All the things you need to do to stay on top. Specifically HIPAA. I mean, they expect you to have the same IT infrastructure as a hospital who's spending millions of dollars a year with the latest and greatest firewall equipment. That can get really cost prohibitive. And I think that a lot of practices are going to realize that if you find like-minded people who are willing to work together, they can consolidate their resources, eliminate the duplication, and have a far better patient experience that will continue to drive the financial stability of the practice. And so I think there's a little bit of element on that. I think you can't deny the hospitals are continuing to purchase or practices and employ general pediatricians. And that's a sad reality. The reality is that there are many hospitals that I've seen arrangements where they're essentially subsidizing the cost. I mean, it's no secret that I think the latest statistic we saw last week was that each doctor cost on average approximately $100,000 per employee physician. And, you know, it's coming from somewhere. And at some point, I think the hospitals are going to start to realize that they can't continue to subsidize these physicians. At the end of the day, a physician's ability to generate income, they're going to have to cover their own costs. So if a pediatrician generates $500,000 a year and the overhead rate is 60%, that only leaves you $200,000 to pay for their salary, their benefits, and everything else. And so it's a tricky proposition, and I'm not really sure how much longer pediatrician hospitals will be willing to subsidize the income for the pediatrician. We all know that the hospitals simply want the referral. I mean, they're not out there bringing pediatricians into their network out of the kindness of their heart. They want the referral, those four-wheeler accidents. They want those NICU admissions. They want the complicated cases. They want those referrals into the hospital. And although there are stark laws out there, there are ways to kind of tiptoe around them. And, you know, I think it really puts the independent practices at a significant disadvantage. And until the hospitals have had enough of subsidizing the pediatricians and their salary, I don't see a change in that area.
So where are we 5 years from now then? Is the trend just continuing?
I think operationally where we're going to see some changes is that as more and more families get higher deductible plans, they're going to think twice before they go in to have their child seen by a pediatrician. You know, I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but there's a growing number of patients are now on deductible plans, which means that if their child is sick and the allowed amount on a 99213 is $68, then plus whatever labs and everything they may do, you know, the parents are very cognizant of the fact that in January, February, March, because they haven't reached their deductible, they're less likely to go see their pediatrician. They're more likely to Google Dr. Google and see if they can treat something. And so there's going to be, it's gone are the days, oh, $15, I can go see my pediatrician. There are much fewer people on that ballpark. As a result of this, the children, I believe, are going to be coming in with a higher level of acuity, and which is going to consume more resources on the part of the pediatrician and require more time to take care of these children. And so you have less inflow and more work per visit. And, you know, with less inflow, it's less revenue, and more work is higher cost. So that really presents a challenge for these practices. I've always said, pediatrics is the Walmart of healthcare. High volume, low margin. And I think that the margins are going to get slimmer over time, and it's going to need to be, practices are going to need to run like a well-oiled machine in order to generate that revenue that's needed.
You bring up an interesting point about high deductible plans and that they'd most likely wait until things got more serious. what are your thoughts then on the future of telemedicine in pediatrics?
I think telemedicine is really a good idea and concept. It offers a lot of potential. And I think that there are places where telemedicine is entirely appropriate. I think the best scenario that I can think of, rock solid, is subspecialty follow-up appointment. For example, my brother, who's an infectious disease pediatrician, he may have a family who's having to drive 2 hours each way for a simple consult. Now, and I love my brother, and it's probably worth the time, but that's a big time commitment to go and see a doctor for a 30, 45-minute visit. And so in that situation, it is ideal. Maybe you can get into some of the behavioral health issues, follow up on medication if there are no issues. Mom calls in, I need to get a refill. Oh, we need to check out Johnny. And okay, well, have you been having any problems? No. Great. We're going to set that up at a telehealth visit. If there are concerns, you may be able to do it there. There are a variety of ways. So there are some places where it works really well. I think the biggest challenge right now is trying to get managed care companies to pay reasonable rates so it doesn't cannibalize the office visit. Because at the end of the day, the doctor's not really going to get paid until the patient walks through the door, is seen, and leaves. And we have to strike a balance between giving away their expertise and being compensated for it in an appropriate manner. And until the managed care plans really start to make a commitment to support it financially, then I don't anticipate that there's going to be an incentive for practices to abandon the current model and shift over. I am aware that there are some concierge practices that use it very heavily, and it worked really well for them because of the circumstances they're in. But your typical pediatric bread and butter practice, there's really I'm not seeing a clear-cut incentive that doesn't jeopardize the financial bottom line.
Paul, I was looking at I think I was looking at PMI site, or it might have been your LinkedIn. I noticed that late last year, you had a 99 Designs contest or a vote where you can go and vote for the cover of your book called Managing the Mirrors, except for I haven't seen Managing the Mirrors come out. At least it looks like you haven't been promoting it yet. So I'd love to know what that book is about, and additionally, when and if it is coming out.
So, boy, you did some interesting homework there. Managing the Mirrors is a short read book that I've written that shares a variety of anecdotes and experiences. It really explores about how to be in a pediatric practice, because they're all pediatric examples, how to be an effective leader. And there was a gentleman I used to work with years ago. His name was Jim Nichols. And he was I just remember as clear as day, even today, 20 years later. I remember him literally holding a mirror to me and saying, "What do you see? What do you see in yourself as a practice administrator?" And that's really the origin of the title. And really the book examined that process of self-reflection and what it takes to be an effective physician leader within a practice. It should be a fairly easy read and, less than 100 pages. And we're looking to have it out by middle of the fall 2018.
Speaking of books, Paul, what books would you recommend for the audience?
Frankly, I'm not a big book reader. I'm a magazine reader. I'm a big fan of keeping up with the news, but the reason I do it is because that's how you find out about the Aetna-CVS merger and what's going on there and how does that affect pediatrics.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that for a second. Can we dive a little deeper into the direction that CVS is headed and how that will affect the audience?
So by way of background, basically Aetna and CVS, there's going to be a merger. And originally the thought was that it was going to be related to saving money on prescription drugs. Well, really, one of the diamonds in the rough on this deal is that CVS has a lot of nurse practitioners who are set up in those stores. And, you know, if I call my pediatrician and he's tied up, then I would say, well, I'll just go down the street to CVS and have a nurse practitioner check them out. And, you know, there are some pediatricians who, you know, that, I mean, philosophically, that really undermines the concept of a medical home. But at the end of the day, on the financial side, let's say you lose 2 patients a day. 2 patients a day decide to go down to the CVS. So if the average reimbursement is as low as $100 per visit, that's $200 a day, that's $1,000 a week, that's $52,000 a year, and you haven't reduced your overhead. So theoretically, you can draw a nice straight line to show that the financial impact is, because, you know, it's the last $200,000 that the pediatrician gets to put in their pocket if they own their practice. Well, if we carve away 2 of those patients a day, we've got $52,000 less on the low side.
Wow.
So it had a direct impact. And so add to that urgent cares. Urgent cares are popping up everywhere. They're a hot item. On the financial side, a lot of people are investing in urgent cares because those, the global fee is a very attractive fee, and they're bringing in investments and opening up these beautiful facilities, but those are direct competition for the pediatric practices. You have more dual income families. They can't always make it to the office before they close at 5 o'clock. And so that's why I encourage more families to consider going later into the evening. I have a practice in Georgia that I work with, and you'll never guess what time she starts seeing patients.
1 or 2
Her
in the
first
afternoon?
patient is at 6 o'clock in the morning. And it's a checkup, and she starts seeing patients at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the patients are there. And it's because those dual income families, those families that value the time to be able to get those types of things out of the way before they go to work, before they go to school. And she got fairly creative. Now, she's only one out of however many pediatricians in the country who start that early that I'm aware of. But it really shows that she is cognizant of the fact that that's what the patients want. On the same token, you have the people who are working and who they can't get there to the office, because if the office closes at 5, the last scheduled appointment is probably going to be 4:15, 4:30. Well, we need to go a little later on those hours so that we can get some of those patients in and be able to accommodate those patients. And, you know, this really boils down to a interesting question that I posed a group of pediatricians. I was up in Chicago a couple months ago giving a talk, and I asked them, if a well check was not required to go into kindergarten, what % of your 5-year-olds would get checkups? And I said, would everyone not agree that the % of 5-year-old checkup would drop if it was not a requirement for kindergarten? They all said yes. And I said, I gotcha, because that proves right there that you have not, as a practice, done a good job to convey your value proposition.
Yep.
And we shouldn't regulate the urgent cares out of the market. We shouldn't put up barriers for the nurse practitioners and the CVSs, but we should embrace it and step up to the challenge. And it's just incumbent upon the practices to define what their value proposition is and convey that to the patient to keep the business. And that requires a lot of work. That takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of time. But that, I believe, the practices who recognize their value proposition and effectively sell it to the patient are the ones who are going to do okay.
Paul, this has been incredible. And to be honest with you, we only got through about half of my questions, which means we'll have to do a part 2 later this year, maybe around when Managing New Year's comes out.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity. It was great to spend some time with you and share with the audience what we do. And, we got a lot of exciting things coming up between the upcoming roadshow, the PMI conference, and all the things that we have going on, and encourage people to check out pediatricsupport.com to stay up to date with what's going on.